Last week I was talking about how Facebook made billions of dollars and got a $1 billion tax break. Basically, paid no taxes, got a $400 million tax refund, in fact, courtesy of you and me. And they did it through this let's compensate our executives with stock options and make that tax deductible. And then those executives convert those stock options to pay. Well, it's not paid. They convert them to cash. They call it capital gains, and they pay a maximum 20% income tax with no Social Security taxes, et cetera. And basically, this is one of those sweet little tax loopholes that if your corporation's big enough, and maybe this is just sour grapes. I don't know. I've got a small corporation with a half a dozen employees, and my CPA tells me that there's no way that if I was to say, oh, look at this, my corporation has shown a profit, let's declare a dividend. I'm going to take my income as dividends and pay 20% income tax. He said I'd end up in jail. But Mark Zuckerberg, he can do that. This is called gaming the system. Chuck Gallagher's on the line with us. He's the CEO and author of Second Chances, Transforming Adversity into Opportunity. His website, chuckgallagher.com. Chuck, welcome to the program.
Hi, Tom. How are you today?
Fine. I am strongly of the opinion that things like this, or like the oil depletion allowance, which the oil companies say, well, as we pump the oil out of the ground, this well becomes worth less and less, so we should get a tax break. And I say, every year that I get older, I'm worth less and less. Eventually I'll have to retire. So shouldn't I get an age depletion allowance? But no. Oil companies get it. I don't. You don't. Isn't it time for us as a people, the United States, the citizens of the United States, to say enough already of the buying of our politicians and buying of legislation by fat cats like the Koch brothers and ExxonMobil and, in this case, Facebook?
Well, here's the thing. You got a great question. Is it time to change? And the answer to that's probably yes. But at the same time, you have a small company, and so do I, Tom, but you can't fault Mark Zuckerberg for complying with and following what people in the United States Congress have written as the tax law and comply with the law of the land.
I'm not. I'm faulting, frankly, the 5 justices on the United States Supreme Court who say that money is the same thing as speech, and therefore Zuckerberg's corporation can spend millions of dollars hiring lawyers and hiring lobbyists. And frankly, it wasn't Facebook who came up with this. This has been in tax code since the Reagan administration. This was a major change, in fact, that was brought to you courtesy of a Republican Congress and Ronald Reagan's presidency, that prior to that time, you could not compensate executives with stock, and the maximum compensation for a CEO is $1 million, and beyond that, you could compensate them, but you couldn't deduct it. The company, it was not deductible to the corporation, which, by the way, is still in place. I believe it's $2 million now, and Reagan changed the law during the Reagan administration. They changed the law to allow for this executive compensation via stock on this theory that executives should be operating on behalf of the stockholders, and which is turning capitalism on its head. I mean, historically, the executives operated on behalf of the corporation itself. What is good for the corporation, not what is good for the stockholders. And what is good for the corporation, by the way, typically was also what was best for the employees and for the customers. Now we've got customers being screwed routinely. We got employees being screwed routinely. The corporation itself is being screwed routinely. They're being bought, sold, destroyed, macerated, chewed up, spit out, sold overseas, whatever. And the only people who are making out like bandits are the stockholders, and in particular the stockholders at the top of the corporation. And it's just, I think this is a terrible, one of the many terrible Reaganomics experiments that has gone seriously wrong. Switzerland is holding a referendum to criminalize this, actual jail time for this kind of thing. And it looks like it's going to pass in Switzerland March 3rd or March 6th. They're going to hold a nationwide vote on CEO compensation. And, of course, the loudest voices there are the CEOs of the three most well-compensated CEOs in all of Switzerland turn out to be Americans. And it's like, Bloomberg reporting on this. Let me get the details here. These 3 Americans, the CEOs of Novartis, Roche, and Nestle. Dugan Hogan and Jimenez are the names of the guys. And they're saying, oh, wait a minute, you can't do this. And the Swiss are saying, we sure can, just watch us.
Yeah, the one thing the Swiss are doing is at least recognizing the harsh reality that something has to change. And the question then comes back in our country is, at what point in time do the politicians decide that we need to operate in a practical economic way as opposed to looking at the shareholder as the end-all to end-all for the companies?
Well, I even go beyond that. I say I don't think that our politicians are operating in our interests. Frankly, they're not operating in the interests of corporations. They're operating in the interests of the people who are funding their campaigns. And this is the fatal flaw that has been brought to us, not just by Citizens United, but by Buckley versus Vallejo before that, and First National Bank versus Bellotti before actually Buckley was earlier than First National, and all the way back to arguably Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad, 1886, and in fact, arguably back to Dartmouth v. United States in 1815. This idea that corporations should have standing in court as persons and have some rights under the Bill of Rights. This is nuts.
Well, it may be nuts, but it also is practically the law of the land. And the reality comes, you can either dramatically undo a lot of what's taken place, option one, which would take a whole lot.
You can do that with a simple amendment to the Constitution that simply says, A, corporations are not people, B, money is not speech, it's property.
Well, you could go that far, but, the practicality is you're not going to get that. You'd have a whole lot better chance at looking and saying, you know what, if you look at the root cause of a lot of what's taking place, it is what you said earlier, that money is buying elections for people who want to be career politicians instead of politicians looking for what is in the best interest of the citizens that they represent.
Well, by and large, they have no choice. I mean, those few politicians who actually represent the best interests of their citizens are the lucky few, people like Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont, who live in states or districts that are small enough that they can engage in retail politics. Senator Sanders lives in a state with 600,000 people in it, and he's been in politics there for 20 years. He has probably met and shaken the hands of every single person in Vermont. I lived there for 10 years when he was my state representative, or my federal, United States member of the House of Representatives, and attended a couple of events that he put on just because he was ubiquitous. I mean, Bernie was everywhere. He just won re-election to the Senate without spending $1 on television advertising, while his opponent spent $5 million. That's the power of having that luxury of being in a small district or a small state and being a good retail politician. But most politicians in the United States don't have that luxury, and they're facing multi-million-dollar campaigns that are funded by big corporations or billionaires. And this is just wrong.
What, Tom, would happen if they weren't career politicians?
I want career politicians. Thomas Jefferson was a career politician. He did a damn good job. James Madison was a career politician. George Washington was a career politician. I want people who have institutional memory. I want people who have been around the block. If you get rid of the career politicians, if you term limit these people out, you know what's going to be the long-term institutional memory of this city here in Washington, D.C.? It's going to be the lobbyists.
Well, that very well may be true in terms of long-term memory, but the lobbyists don't get a vote.
No, they don't, but they will become the person to whom all the new politicians turn to say, how does this place work? What do I do? So, anyhow, that's my take on it. But Chuck Gallagher, an interesting conversation, chuckgallagher.com. You can check it out, author of Second Chances, Transforming Adversity into Opportunity. Thanks, Chuck, for dropping by.